You know what the definition of a good song is?
Oh, geez.
When someone else likes it.
Yeah, right. Okay. I don't know if I've had a good song.
That's because I have a tendency to just, you want me to talk about myself? Fuck yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No.
Here I go. Hi, I'm Richard Torrance, and I live in Bismarck, North Dakota, and I have been a professional musician my entire life, and very proud of it.
Were you really in a Canadian band called the Gettysbyrg Address?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Did you guys wear top hats?
No, and you get the parody of it. They called it the Gettysbyrg Address, and they're Canadian.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was just like they said it was just kind of like I joined them, and they had already been playing together under that name for quite some time.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it was kind of funny. They the Gettysburg Address, right? Mean anything to you? And he goes, yeah, you guys had some significant thing, right?
That was in Winnipeg?
Yeah.
I've just recently started going this last couple of years, and I like it up there a lot, too. It's a little quicker to get there than Minneapolis, if the weather's okay.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
It actually is. My first car, well, I have to preface it a little bit by letting you know that I came from a well-to-do family. So my story is a little bit different. I didn't have to scrape and save, and my dad wasn't over my shoulder saying, you can't get a car until you can afford a car, and you know, if you, whatever. So I was given a car when I was 13 years old to drive.
Oh, cool.
Because I got my license when I was 15, so that would put it in 1965. And my mom and dad loved Cadillacs. They loved the high-end cars. So they could afford it, so they bought them. So Dad had a black 55 Cadillac sitting in the driveway right when I got my driver's license. So they said, you can drive that one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'll take the 55 Cadillac any day.
Yeah.
You know, but even back in those days, I can remember thinking, God, it's kind of a little old, you know. It's an old person's car. A Cadillac is an old person's car, you know. And I would have preferred something a little bit more racy. But that happened later in life. They were giving me this car, so if I banged it up, that wasn't too much of a loss. Back then, it was just, it was already a 55 to 65, 10-year-old car, yeah.
No other mark of identification speaks so clearly of the product that bears it as does the famous Cadillac V and Crest. Here, it adorns the hood of the 1955 Cadillac. This magnificent new Cadillac presents truly thrilling beauty in every detail and from every angle. Inside, you see luxury and graciousness with modern fabrics and unusual beauty of appointments. And on the road, Cadillac's masterful 250 horsepower engine, its incredibly smooth hydromatic drive, and its advanced power steering provide the finest performance in Cadillac history. Truly, the Cadillac V and Crest have never before represented so much in quality and beauty and performance as for 1955. See it today at your Cadillac dealers.
So that was my first car, and I started I can remember the first day I got my driver's license. After I took the test, my mom drove me to take the test, and after I took the test, she had to meet me in her car. So somehow or other, the car that I was taking the test in got down. I can't remember, but it got down to the DMV, right? So I take my driver's test, and yippee, I passed the driver's test, and they give me a little, back in those days, 1965, right? Nothing exists. No phones, no computers. And so I got this piece of paper signifying that I could drive a car. And my mom had to go back to work, so I just got in the car and went out to the big boy.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was, all right, I've got, that was my last thing. That's my ticket to freedom now.
Nice.
I got a driver's license. I was absolutely beside myself. I was so excited because that was the last thing that I finally got away from, was asking Mom for a drive, you know, or to get me down to where I needed to go. So I thought that was it. So, you know, I got home, it was about 5:30, and my mom was there, and she goes, "Where were you?" And I said, "Well, I went to the big boy." "Why?" She said, "You know, you have to ask permission to do these things." And I was like, I was totally taken aback. I was like, "Really? But you're working, you and Dad work at the store all day long, sometimes into the evening, and, you know, I don't even see you. So what difference does it make?" All right. I kind of had her on that one.
Yeah.
She was like, "Okay, well, you have to let me know where you're going." And that was pretty much how it was then. I would just give a phone call and say, I'm going over to such and such's house. I loved that Cadillac. Oh my God. It did impress some girls too.
Yeah, of
and
course.
Isn't that what we get cars for? So from your generation forward, probably drive-in movies was not a thing, was it?
I lived in Williston for a while, and we had one up I moved out of there in 96, and they kept it through some part of the 2000s. So I have gone
So you
to a
actually
few
have
films
gone.
there.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, in our day, that was all we had for entertainment, was
yeah.
movies. So we either went to the theaters, Bismarck had 2 of them, or we went to the drive-in, which was on the strip in between Bismarck and Mandan. And there actually used to be 2, if I think back to when I was really young, when my mom and dad would go to them. I think there was another one on the east side of town. Anyway, that's not the one I went to. But yeah, asking, you know, "Mom, can I take, you know, a girl to the drive-in on Friday night?" You know, we would have a lot of fun there. There'd be all kinds of people that'd be pulling up, and it would just be a party.
Yeah. Did you watch the movie?
No. Can't tell you one of them. They were usually, you know, horror stories, 'cause Vincent Price scary movies, you know, it seems like that's all that was at the theaters, except whenever there was a major release or something, you know, and otherwise it was just these scary movies and afternoon matinees that I went to all the time. So after I got my driver's license, then the drive-in movie was definitely the next step forward.
Back then, they would just charge per person too, right?
Yeah.
So were you ever like sneaking people in the trunk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the things too. But the deal is that it always stayed light for so long, you know.
Oh, yeah,
We'd
yeah.
get so excited and we'd be, "Oh, let's just go. And it'd be like 8:30. And we'd have to be out there for like an hour and a half before it was dark enough for them to even start it.
I forgot about that too. Yeah.
So they could see everything out there. So we rarely tried to do any mischief. But sometimes, you know, a person would pull up with either a pickup truck or another thing that we don't have anymore that we had back in those days. It's called a station wagon.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And my dad had a couple of those, and I got the opportunity to drive station wagons too.
Yeah.
Totally a kick to drive one of those station wagons. I mean, it was a bed in the back, for crying out loud, you know?
So I never got to drive one, but I was the kid that got to ride in the back of one, you know? Not safe, no seatbelts, just hanging out in that big open area, looking out the back window.
Later on in my life, fast forward to when I've got a record deal and we're traveling around the country, and to save money, they would fly us out to a region. Then we'd be renting cars and playing the smaller cities in that region before we'd leave it. And so they would rent a van, a station wagon, and our equipment truck had already driven out from the West Coast to the East Coast. I'm referring to the East Coast because that was the first place that we started touring. And they would get these station wagons that had the back seat facing backwards. It folded down, but apparently on this particular design, the only way they could get it to fold down was to turn it around and have it fold backwards.
Okay.
And it also meant for more people in there and more room. But driving backwards in a vehicle was not my cup of tea, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd get sick. I'd get car sick every time, and I was always the laugh of the band, like, oh, Torrance, you can't take it. I'm like, you're right. I can't take it.
Yeah,
That's it. Sorry, I throw up, So those, I didn't like those, that seat in the back. Whew,
Yeah,
that drove me
facing
crazy.
backwards. Yeah, it's disorienting. Yeah.
But I can tell you that the 55 Cadillac stayed with me for probably 2 years.
Oh, that's it, huh?
Uh-huh.
What'd you do?
Well, by then I realized the value of a car and that it is an extension of your ego.
Yeah.
And, the nicer the car, the more important you felt, right?
Sure.
And that was like a proven, it's a class divider. People that got terrible old beat up cars, you assume are broke, right? Or they don't have a lot of money to work with, and that's why they're driving that. Not always the case, I know. There are a lot of people that go, I just don't want a nice car because it's just going to get smashed up anyway, and they just drive shitty little cars. I'm into that. I can understand that. But once you've been in a nice car, you want another nice car.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I had a love of automobiles. It was incredible. See, I was alive when TVs were invented. Mom and Dad got their very first TV when I was 5 years old, and I can still remember that day. And it was an amazing experience. And then there would be 2 channels, 5 and 12. And otherwise there was just snow or, that white noise and the blank screen, except for those 2 channels. And most of the day they had this test pattern that was up on the screen that I've never seen again but there would only be like 5 hours of movies or things a day.
Yeah.
5 hours of airtime a day. And then the rest of it was just blank. It's amazing how it started out. And then all of a sudden, when they turned it on, you get that whiff of that picture tube, that ozone cooking,
Yeah, and you just feel that static on the outside.
Yeah, here's this electrical thing in our house, So I was a TV baby. And, one of the first things that happened with TV was advertisements. They realized real quick, oh, people are just sitting in front of this thing. We can flash our name on the screen and they'll remember it. So car commercials started coming out. And they were so exotic and all these great cars. So I moved from that one to a Porsche. And it was at a Volkswagen dealer that was just on the Mandan side of the Memorial Bridge, the old Memorial Bridge. And I drove by it, and my sister had a Volkswagen, so I had been into that dealership. But this particular day, I drove by it, and there was a 911 Porsche sitting in the showroom. It was over for me.
Yeah.
That was it. I had to go home and work on Mom. And I did, believe me.
Yeah.
I came up with every reason why I needed a Porsche. And most of those reasons are pretty much vanity, right?
Right.
Well, you want me to look like I've got something going on. You don't want me to driving around in a piece of shit,
Yeah.
They're safe cars, staying away from all the things and they really attract beautiful women, and you can drive like 90 in 3 seconds. They're really fast cars in corner Anyway, so I talked her into it, and I got that car. And boy, did I love that Porsche. So I had that one probably for a couple of years too. And then my girlfriend at the time got in an accident. She claims that I'm the one that got in the accident. And it's been so long ago that I couldn't really guarantee which one of us got in the accident. But anyway, it was bad enough to where we had to do the body work. And after that, I didn't care for it too much. So I have this thing about once you've had an accident with a car,
right? Yeah,
maybe you should turn it and get something else.
Yeah.
So I usually do that. And I went from that one to a Chevy Camaro. What was it called? A 350 Super Sport. Yellow with a black racing stripe around the front of the car.
Cool.
It's just an unbelievable car. People thought I was crazy to get rid of the Porsche for an American Chevy, but I was taken with the commercial on TV. I went, man, that looks good riding down that freeway, doesn't it? You know, so talking to Mom again.
Yeah.
Okay, this time she said, well, we're going to have to work out a payment schedule. And I was like, payments?
Yeah, what? I got to pay for this?
What do you mean, payments? I had no idea about insurance or any of that stuff. You know, wasn't until I got close to graduation that I started realizing, when I move out, I got to pay for all of this stuff. I get it. Oh, that was a rough one. Because of the fact that my mom and dad had this department store in Bismarck, and that put us into a upper middle class, financially family, we were kind of a high profile family. Mom and dad were involved in a lot of the civic community things, and they had parties and invited lots of people up. And because of this store, they had like, I don't know how many employees, 120 maybe more.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. And it was a 3-story. It was like a J.C. Penney's.
Yeah.
And
okay.
it was in existence before J.C. Penney's came to Bismarck.
Where
So
was it located?
it was on 4th Street in between Main Street and Broadway.
Okay.
Okay, there was, and it was on the west side of the street, and it took up from where that alley is almost all the way over to the corner, the north corner.
Okay.
It was a big store. Anyway, so I was kind of used to thinking that I wasn't like a lot of kids,
Oh, yeah.
and that I was really different. And then came the day when a boyfriend of one of my sisters, I had 3 older sisters, brought this guitar home, just a beat up old acoustic guitar, and the strings were like an inch off the neck, and had what strings there were there, you know. And I just went, he says, here, you want this? And I went, yeah, I'll take that guitar. And I just immediately started picking up on it. And my mom saw that I was playing it the wrong way. I was strumming with my left hand, so I was playing left-handed.
Okay.
And which is the opposite of the majority of what the people that play guitar do.
Sure.
And that's the way the guitar was designed. It was designed for the left hand on the neck, the right hand, you know, I mean, for years it was that. And then people started thinking they could turn it around. So manufacturers started making them so they could turn them around. But in the beginning, they weren't. And my mom said, I don't know how she had the insight to all of this, because she never was in a band, but she played piano and she loved music. She said to me, first of all, if you ever go somewhere and you're going to want to play with the people that are there, they won't have a guitar for you. You'll have to always carry around a left-handed guitar. It is a thing. And she said, and then she said something that really made sense to me. And I still carry that with me. And she said, doesn't it make sense to you to use the strongest hand, your primary hand, for the most difficult part of it? You know, all your fingers are constantly moving on the neck, and you got to use your hand like a vice sometimes to hold the chord. Use your strongest hand for that. So I thought about it, and I turned it around. She said, I'll go and buy you some strings. Okay, I'll work on it. So that was my first encounter with the guitar, which started up a whole new thing for me. It was just, okay, this is it. My hands fell immediately into the form of a C chord.
Oh, okay.
And I looked down, and I still didn't know any chords yet. But I was looking at this, and I just kind of pressed down on the strings where my fingers were and strummed it. This is after she's tuned it up and got it going. And it was a C chord. And she said, how did you know how to play that? And I said, I don't know. My fingers just kind of relaxed. They just go into that position. She's, okay, well, get a book. So then I started with learning the chords and stuff. And it wasn't long. I think it was about 4 days before I, with my ears, picked up a song, learned the 4 chords. It was Later, I found out they're called the ice cream changes because it's like the 3 chords, only they add a minor in there.
Okay.
So 1, 4, 5, but there's a minor in there. And it was so commonly used in the 50s for songs, they called it the ice cream changes. So that was the chord progression. And took me like a week to figure out the chords and be able to sing a song from the beginning of it to the end of it. And that song was called 26 Miles Across the Sea. And that's because back in those days, all I listened to was AM radio because that was all that was being played during the day when I would come home. And so I was hearing all of this country, but the old country, you know, Johnny Cash and Hank Williams and those people. Man, it was just and I liked all of that music. I was really in tune with it. And then as time progressed, I started, FM radio came out. It was a whole different thing.
Yeah.
No static going underneath the underpasses. That was the biggest thing for us. It's like, wow, no static, no dropouts, you know? And we was just so enthusiastic. And then they started playing the kind of music that we were really enjoying, like Beatles and things like that. But my first, going back to that 55 Cadillac, the only music that was available in that was an AM radio.
Okay.
And it was played all the time. But back in those days, you got to understand the kind of music they would play. Every once in a while, they would sneak in, like I'd be listening to the radio when my mom and dad were driving, and they would have it turned on to a country station or KFYR, I guess that's KFYR or KBMR or KXMB was the only 2 radio stations that we could pick up in a car. And they just played very conventional music, very middle-of-the-road music. Then every once in a while, the first time I ever heard Joni Mitchell was on AM radio, and it was the song Taxi. And I fell in love with her. I was like, whoa, she had this rhythm going with her guitar, and she's singing this song, and her voice was tremendous. And then she, at the end of the song, she goes, "Paved paradise, put up a parking lot." She giggles a little bit. I was in love. That was it. I was in love with this woman. I needed to know more about her. And so I started buying her albums. And then same thing happened with other artists that just, I remember hearing Leadbelly music on AM radio. The Rock Island Line was a crazy song. And it was him talking and just hillbilly music, basically. But it was blues.
Okay.
And I started going, I really like that music. And so in hanging out down at Guy Larson's Music, a few times, some players would come in. And I was still young kids, still learning. So I wouldn't even be holding a guitar yet. I'd just be looking, But I'd be listening. And there was a couple of times when some real good players came in. I don't know where they were, if they lived in town or if they might have been playing in town or something. But, when you're playing, when you've learned just a few things and you're starting to go, I think I'm getting this.
Yeah, right.
And then somebody comes in and just walks all over everything you've learned. And, the first thing I did was, God, I don't know anything yet, But then my instinct was to watch his hand because he played a little riff, and I went, how do you do that? And he played it again. So I watched him, and he kind of was doing this hooky thing. Actually, you know what it was? It was actually the guitar part to the song Memphis. And it's got this movement in it that is really cool. And I just was so taken with it. And so I watched this guy. And then, of course, I ran home and picked up my guitar, and I figured out how to play it. And I realized, wow, I can just watch people and figure it out. So that I learned so fast with my ear and eyes that I never even took an interest in learning to read. Mm-hmm. Which, if anyone out there is listening and wondering whether you should learn to read music, I strongly recommend it. It's really a good talent, and it can be used in a lot of wonderful ways. But the thing that learning by ear provides you is you're not so concerned with how the note falls into place in regards to math, and that's what reading is all about. That note stays for a particular amount of time, or you hit it and you're off it, and then you got to know the exact name of the note. My eyes were just not in tune with
Right.
I
yeah.
wasn't really into being a reader either. I had to go to different reading classes because I had an issue apparently with reading. I like to read now, but I'm a slow reader, guaranteed. My eyes are just slow. But anyway, so we started going. I joined a band here in town, and we started playing at this place called the Teen Club, and it was on West Main, and that was our stomping ground. We learned a lot there. We played there probably every third weekend, and it was just an amazing club. That's back in the days when kids got together and danced, had fun, had soft drinks, and that was okay.
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm in the Tradewinds. It's a 4-piece band. And then we added a keyboard player, another high school friend of ours, Rip Cullen. So we had Rick Miller, Pat Majors, myself, Rip Cullen, and we got a guy named Mark Van Horn to sing, just like a out front singer. And that band got pretty strong, and then the keyboard player told us that he could play a trumpet. So we loved R&B, so we wanted to add horns to the band. So we asked the lead singer if he'd buy a trombone and learn how to play trombone, which he did. His tone, may not have gotten all the way there, but he did a valiant effort, and he played a lot of horn parts. So it worked. It was good enough to work. And then we asked another guy to join, and he played guitar and saxophone. So we had a band where we could switch off and have horns when we wanted them, and it got to be a really good band. So we started circulating around other cities in North Dakota, and then we decided that maybe we should go to Minneapolis and see what can happen. Try and book ourselves for a summer. So that was in the days when you could call up an agency and say, we'd like to come in and audition. We've got a really good band. And they say, oh, great. When can you come in? There was no dues to pay. There was no management necessary. It was just like, sure, come on in. We'd love to hear you.
Cool.
So we did. And there was an agency in Minneapolis that we went with that I can't remember their names, but we got a lot of gigs that summer. And we actually we bought a school bus, and we were living in the school bus and playing these gigs. And then my mom came out and rented a little place on Lake Minnetonka, and we could go and clean up over at her place and swim in the lake during the day, and then we'd go and play these gigs. And it was set. It was a setup gig.
I'd say.
We had some really fun times and good gigs. Through that, we met this guy whose name I do remember because he was very instrumental in a lot of our success. His name was Frank Weiner, and he worked out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, and his agency was called The Hungry Eye. And he had control of a lot of the rooms in Winnipeg. Plus, he was involved in concert promotion. So he really liked the band. He liked the show, and we had matching suits. We did choreography. It was a hot band for those days. I don't think you could catch me dead doing that today, but maybe for fun as a parody. But anyway, so he had this club. It was actually called The Hungry Eye, and he had music all Friday and all Saturday, and then Sunday he couldn't open until there's no drinking in Winnipeg, so he couldn't open the club until 12:01 a.m., which is what he did, and we'd go for 3 hours. So we'd play from 12:01 a.m. to 3 a.m., pack up our gear, and drive back home.
Oh, okay.
And every time we'd play a weekend like that, I inevitably would miss school, of course, because
there's no way you're getting up
8,
Yeah.
And of course, Mom and Dad weren't too fond of that, but it went on. I was able to do it for a while, and through that guy, the Hungry Eye, we locked into a tour with a group called a national Canadian tour with a group called the Box Tops, and they were out of the South, and they had a hit with the original version of The Letter that later on, what's his name, made a huge... Anyway, the song was called The Letter, and they were touring up in Canada to promote the hit. It was a huge hit back in the early 60s, I think it was. Yeah, because I was probably 16, 17 when that was happening. So we got booked on this tour all the way across all the major cities in Canada with this group called the Box Tops. And we were playing to thousands of people at that point. It was an amazing experience for high school kids. But we weren't writing music. We weren't in tune with, well, this is what we want to do. We're going to just stick together like the Rolling Stones probably did immediately. Just like, this is it for us, because eventually one of the drummers that was with us decided, I want to be a doctor. There's a lot more money in being a doctor.
Sure,
bye.
Yeah.
And so, we replaced him, and then a couple of, through the course of all of this stuff, we actually did get a horn section, real horn players that did nothing but played horns, and 3-piece horn sections. So it was like a 9-piece band.
Jeez.
Yeah. And it was getting a little hard to make any money at all. And everybody was getting a little antsy. And I wanted to go to California and see what all of this singer-songwriter stuff was about. So that's what happened at that point. That band kind of disintegrated.
Okay.
And
they didn't keep going after you.
No, they wanted to, but they couldn't get it off the ground for one reason or another. And so,
because you weren't there. Yeah.
Well, I didn't say that. One might think that. So I did. I headed out to California when I was about 6 months after graduation.
Right on.
18 years old. And
did you take a bus or?
No, I had a Volkswagen at that point.
Okay.
I went from the 55 Cadillac to the 911 Porsche to the Chevy Camaro to the Volkswagen. I don't think there was any other cars in between there. And the Volkswagen I rolled one night, unfortunately, but that's another story. The Volkswagen got me out to California. I love that little car. It was a great one. Everyone should own a Volkswagen, I think.
Right on, yeah.
It's an amazing experience when you see how well they're built and everything there. So I got out to California.
Which wasn't scary for you. You're a high school kid who's already gone on tours.
Yeah.
That's mind-boggling. And then you're like, all right, fresh out of high school, I'm going to go to another state. Your parents were okay?
My parents, they knew how independent I was. And to try and hold me back simply because they wanted me around the house or I wasn't getting a good education. Thankfully, both of them were on board for what I wanted to do, which was I have to go and find it. It's not something that's just going to come to North Dakota and drop in my lap. I got to go find it. And so I'm either going to go to one of the big cities, New York or Los Angeles. And boy, do I miss sunshine. So let's go to Los Angeles. And that's what happened. I went with another friend of mine, Ken Wiseman, who was the drummer at the time. He and I were bound and determined to hit the big time. And eventually we got a bass player who was his brother-in-law, also came out here from Mandan, and we formed a 3-piece. And I started designing our sound and our look and everything after Grand Funk Railroad. I was really taken with that band and Mark Farner and the way he played guitar. And man, I wanted to do that. So we started practicing as a 3-piece. And, and then I had Hendrix to draw from as well, another 3-piece, and Cream. And, by that point, let's see, that would have been 1969 maybe. Yeah, the end of 68, 69, and 70 was when I was just trying to figure out what to do. And Ken and I got good enough and we formed a band, this trio. We got this gig on the outskirts of UCSB. And it was right during, it was during the Revolution. It was Santa Barbara is where they burned the Bank of America. So they were revolutionaries there, big time, serious.
Yeah.
And these people liked to party, and we just happened to be the perfect band for what they wanted. And so we locked into a Thursday, Friday, Saturday thing for like 6 months and just really had an opportunity to play a lot, figure out what we wanted. Both those guys were thinking that this was going on endlessly. Mm-hmm. But I had met a guy who actually did have a studio in LA, and he said, I have communications and contacts with musicians that will blow you away. So I can see the difference in the level of ability. I hate doing that. You know, I
Right,
say,
right.
here's my level and
Yeah.
here's your level. But when it's an actual fact, you know, at some point you have to say that.
Right, yeah. No, I feel like I've seen this movie. Some fat guy comes up, you know, to the kid. He's got a big cigar, and he's like, you know what, kid? You got talent. I want to sign you.
You're absolutely right.
But you got to get
Colonel
rid of
Tom
these
Parker.
bums. Yeah, yeah.
That's, I mean, the classic story. You're absolutely
Right,
right.
right.
It happens time and time again. Only this guy's look, he was a hippie. You know,
Okay.
he had long hair and a beard and a gorgeous girlfriend. And he said, I'd like you to come down, but you have to come down after hours because I work at this studio. I'm a staff engineer. But we have a deal with this. I'm not saying the name of the studio yet because it's very famous. It became a very famous studio. And so I want that to be a surprise. So I go, all right. And I start going down to the studio and meeting some of these players that he's talking about. And holy shit I was okay. Yeah, I have been maybe a little sheltered in North Dakota, you know, because all of a sudden you're standing right next to this guy who is just either drums or bass, just nailing it, you know? And, you know, okay, this is what it's about. Yeah, it was an enlightening experience for me. So the first thing that I did was I went down there and I got a drummer that was based out of LA, and he and I laid down a guitar and a drum part. Then I went back in and I played bass. And then I went back in and sang the lead vocal. Then I recorded everything. I've built the tracks, which many people do. I'm not bragging about it, but I'm just saying back then it was a little more rare, and it's what helped me get my first deal. So I recorded 3 tracks that way. And my friend who was recording me, his name is Dwayne Scott. He is deceased, but he was a wonderful friend, and he got me my first record deal because his girlfriend happened to work at Shelter Records, and that was Leon Russell's label, and Leon was huge at that point. He had a solo album out. He had produced all kinds of stuff with Denny Cordell, who was the producer of Whiter Shade of Pale. So these two guys, I mean, they're icons.
Yeah,
and
that's such a good song, too.
And they're
Holy.
looking for talent.
Yeah.
So this is how it happened. The girlfriend, her name's Carol. She calls Dwayne and she says, listen, Denny Cordell is in the office today because he was rarely there. He's English and he was all over the place. He's in the office today and he's sitting in the back there and he's got no appointments. He's just hanging out. He's not doing anything. Bring Richard's music down here and just walk in and play it for him. And he did. He had a funny little cigarette that he walked in the office with and he said, you want to have some of this with me and listen to this music? And then he said, sure, come on in. So they fired it up and enjoyed the Dungy
Yeah, of course.
and listened to my 3 songs. And then he just looked up at him and said, I want to meet him.
Nice.
And that was the next thing we did. We went out to dinner together and I was such a novice. I was like, so trying. How do you act cool around someone that you know has got all of this experience and all of this success?
And you knew all this ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I was tongue-tied.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to say the wrong thing. And then all of a sudden, it was just like I regurgitated all of these questions that I've always wanted to ask a guy like that. Like, so what's it like when you go on tour with, you know, and it was like, it was almost out of Saturday Night Live. It was just went nowhere. It was just a bunch of questions that I have definitely wanted to know the answer to it, you know. Like, God. So, yeah, I kind of made a fool of myself. But Dwayne was with me, and he said, Denny, meet Richard Torrance. And we all got a big laugh out of it. And so,
Nice.
but, yeah, he took us to a real cool little soul food restaurant in L.A. He asked what I wanted. And I said, well, I want to be able to record music, my own music. And I've been told that I'm really good on stage, so I want to be a rock star. And he said, well, that's the first thing you got to have. Do you have a desire, a burning desire, an uncontrollable desire, an obsessive desire to be a rock star? And I'm like, this is the guy, you know, he's saying this shit to me. And so I'm like, yeah, man, absolutely I do. He said, well, good. So continue recording. So he gave us the go to record 3 more songs, which we did. But this one I brought in musicians with, so he could hear what it would like, what it was like for me not to be building my own tracks.
Okay.
And because, there's a big difference in that. I'm an adequate bass player. I can hit the notes, but you're not going to hear me do any, show
Right. Yeah, a
licks.
bunch of scales and whatnot on
Right.
there.
Same with the keyboards. I can comp along, and I'm actually a good drummer too. But I would never go into the studio under the pretense of being a drummer or a bass player, without telling them out front, you're going to get just the bare minimum what you need here. But it'll be in tune and it'll be the right notes. So, but yeah, I had a lot of good players, and we recorded 3 more songs, and he signed me as an artist to Shelter Records. And the funny thing was that he had just signed another group that had just come in from Florida, Gainesville.
Okay.
Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Really?
That was their first record deal, was Shelter Records, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I know it's hard to believe, but we actually did hang out.
Yeah.
He wouldn't know me. Well, he's deceased now, but I mean, even 10 years ago,
Sure.
If he would have been said, "Do you remember hanging out with Richard Torrance and Eureka?" He'd probably say, "Who?" But we did hang out, and they had a circle of friends, and we had a circle of friends, and then we would be invited to parties, and they would be there, And so I got to talk to Tom a few times, and Mike Campbell. But then all of a sudden they got their first album out, and Breakdown came out, and that's when everyone in our band was like, "Uh-oh, these guys are really good." And of course the rest is history. But the thing that was happening with both Tom Petty and me and all the rest of the artists that had signed to Shelter Record was Leon was absolutely obsessed with video, which was a good thing because look where it went. I mean, he bought a video van and started building the video van before anyone had a remote video van in LA. But then he's putting all of this expensive equipment in it because it was really expensive back then. And he's trying to, he's got mixers on the wall for the audio, and then he's got screens over on this side for all of the video, and it was an enormous expense. And then I think because of mismanagement and other reasons, Shelter wasn't able to maintain. So they lost their distribution deal. We signed with MCI for a very short time, and then it went belly up. So I think I had my last album on Shelter might have had an MCI label.
That'd be the third?
Let's see, the first one is Eureka. That was the very first album. The second one was Belle of the Ball. And the third one was Living Today. And the third one, we were recording it when all of this mismanagement and turmoil in their business started happening. So we were told that we had to stop recording. And so we shelved the project. And everyone was very disillusioned, disappointed, and angry, and didn't know what was happening. But if you don't have a PO number to give the recording studio so they can bill for their hours, you don't get in the front door. That's it. There's no, okay, well, we'll just bill them tomorrow then. No. But later on, as I was looking for another deal, somehow or other, Shelter was able to sell some of their catalog to Philips label, which was in Holland. So I got a European release out of the deal. They actually released my album over in Holland.
Oh, yeah.
On the Philips label. Same record cover, everything. It was just pressed over there and printed on the Philips label.
Did you ever go play?
No.
No?
That's still to come.
Yeah?
That's still
Heck
to
yeah.
come. I haven't given up on that. And it's only, I guess, because we were so... I didn't really push for it because I loved America, and we were playing great gigs. We had a lot of crappy gigs too, but you're in an area and you got to supplement the income because you're there, and it's better than sitting in the hotel room and spending another $1,000. So you book a gig, right? Might be a shitty little bar.
Yeah, right.
Or it could be a nice little venue that turns out to be a great gig. You never know until you get there. That's the way that business works. But anyway, so I got that release, and then Capitol was interested in me. And the way that I did that was my lawyer and my manager at the time were pretty strong in the industry. My lawyer had negotiated pretty strong record deals for pretty important bands, that people that were going places. Little Feat for one, 38 Special for another. I mean, they were just, they were negotiators. My manager was the former manager of the Doors. So he had experience in huge stuff and had lots of connections. Why he didn't get me in, I don't know. I really have no idea why. Because I've been told over and over again that it's not that your albums weren't good enough. It was just you slipped through the cracks. You're just one of those acts that slipped through the cracks. And I'm, okay, I can accept that. But I still get fan mail from all over the world. So anyway, I'm looking for a record deal. My manager and my lawyer arranged to have me play a private performance with just my acoustic guitar. Let me backtrack for a second. My manager and lawyer also took me out around, and I met 2 or 3 producers / engineers that would be able to act as a producer, but let me do a lot of this is what I want it to sound like, follow my guidance instead of just take over. And then also be the recording engineer. And there's tons of them. The guy that I was working with for Shelter was that exact guy. So we found this guy named John Haney, and he had also worked on some Doors project. I think that's why they knew each other. And so now I had a producer engineer. So we have to, when you go into a record company, you have to look like you got all the ducks in a row.
Yeah.
So you can get started and everything's in place. So I did actually get 3 private meetings at this producer's house, John Haney's house, beautiful house up in the Hollywood Hills. And Warner Brothers came over, one guy, the head of A&R. Columbia came over, same thing, one guy, head of A&R. And Capitol came over, 3 different nights. And I sat there.
Oh, okay.
So it was just one-on-one. And the only people that were there was the producer, John, myself, and the guy. They came in, sat down. He came in, sat down. We offered him a glass of wine, accepted it, and then John would say, "You want some of this?"
Yep.
Most of them declined that.
Ah.
But I'm pretty sure it was just because of first meeting, and they don't want to appear that they're party animals.
Oh, right.
They're suits. They're the suits, and the line is drawn. I played 3 or 4 songs, and they talked to me and asked me what I was doing, and asked about my deal with Shelter and what I thought my direction might be. And I had been told by this guy John Haney that he knew all of the A Squad studio musicians in L.A. I could get anybody I wanted. I'm like, who do you mean? And he said, okay, well, this is what I had in mind for you for pre-production. I want to get together with the keyboard player from Little Feat. His name is Bill Payne. He's going to come out a couple times a week with you, and he's going to chart out all your stuff so that we've got cheat sheets, which I had never done. I had no experience in that whatsoever. I went, charts? You're going to chart my music? And he said, they're just chord charts. It's just so everybody knows the layout of the song, right? Okay. So I'm going to work with the keyboard player from Little Feat because they were my ultimate favorite band, So I was just in heaven, and I met Billy, and just the nicest guy. We worked together for like 3 weeks outside of the studio, and during that time, John, the producer, was writing down the list of musicians that he thought would work well in this. And they included the rhythm section from Toto, which was Jeff Beccaro and David Hungate on bass. Then we got the percussionist from Little Feat to come in and play some tracks. We got not the Pointer Sisters, but they called themselves the Water Sisters. And they did all of the 3-part Black Lady harmonies that, you hear and it's, oh, wow, those are Black ladies singing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that sound, But it is a particular sound that white people just can't duplicate.
Yeah, that soul.
Yeah, that soul. So I was lucky enough to meet those people. The bass player, aside from David Hungate, the second bass player that he used was Wilton Felder, who was actually the sax player in the Jazz Crusaders. I mean, a hugely popular band. They're selling millions of albums, CDs hadn't come out yet.
Right.
And not only that, but I was told that he makes, in those days, that would have been 76, he was making 200,000 plus a year just doing studio work. I mean, these guys were they got up in the morning and they looked at their schedule, and their roadie already had the schedule. So he would take their equipment for him to the next place. So it would already be there when he arrived. Picaro had 5 sets of drums. He would just have them. He had studio instrument rentals, would just take his drums, set them up, tune them. So all he had to do was walk in, listen to the track, and start playing. I admired that. Those guys had it going on. And I got to tell you, for this greenhorn to walk into a studio, say, okay, here's my song. And I start playing it on acoustic guitar, and I'm just like so self-conscious. Like, they're going to hate this song, And pretty soon they're all kind of grooving with it, and then they start playing a little bit, and he says, is this the feel you think? Yeah. Jeff Picaro's looking at me, saying, is this the thing? You want that kind of a feel? And I'm like, yeah, that'll do just fine. And they just fell together so fast, 2-3 takes. And, yeah. And the rehearsal was just one pass through. It was just amazing. These guys were so fast, and they really, really wanted you to be happy. They wanted the artist. They wanted to give the artist what the artist wanted. Mm-hmm. So they were all very polite and very concerned with, is that what you want? I can play it again for you. You want to do another take? We can do it again. No, man, this is fine. This is good. Let's move on. We got a lot of other songs to do. So we were able to, we spent way too long recording that, my first album on Capitol. But that was probably my best album ever, because it had the song Rio de Janeiro Blue on it that has been recorded by more than 30 people worldwide.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So you get royalties off that?
Oh, God, yes.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Back again, what I'm doing now with my current business partner, Jennifer Lynn, is so different business-wise, because everything is online now. Everything is computerized and digitalized. So
yeah.
Back then, when there's a couple of things that I didn't tell you about that I was excited to tell you about, and I want to backtrack a little bit to that first studio where I made my first albums that I later got signed to Shelter for.
Yes.
Because I said it turned out to be a very, very famous studio, and I didn't say the name of the studio. It was Sound City. Sound City was Fleetwood Mac recorded there. I watched as Stevie and Lindsay walked into the back studio to play for the first time.
Oh, really?
With Fleetwood Mac, yeah. And when they walked out, and their eyes were just glassy and their faces were white, and we're all just staring at them, and they liked us, and I'm like, fuck, is this really happening here?
Yeah.
Mick Fleetwood and John McVie are in the back room, and they just hired 2 friends of mine that are still trying to make it just like I am. It was just amazing. I was around that all the time. And there was one incident where, and then the later thing that happened, there was a video that was made about Sound City that you can find.
A documentary, right?
Yes, Dave Grohl.
Yes, that's right.
He bought
the board
that I recorded Bill of the Ball on.
This came out a few years ago, right?
Yeah. Well, more than a few years now.
Yeah.
I think closer to 5 or 6 maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe even more than that, maybe 10 years ago.
Time
flies.
Yeah.
But they actually contacted me. His office contacted me to find out if I had any video footage of us recording. I could have possibly been on that.
Right.
But, I didn't have enough money to hire people to hang out and take pictures or video cameras, It was just, it didn't happen that way. I have very, very few memorabilia of my 10-year record career, simply because I just didn't think to save any of that stuff,
Did you know how iconic that was at the time?
No.
Right.
Because Wish That I Had Jesse's Girl, that was recorded there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the owner of that studio, the one that was giving my friend the deals, turned out to be his manager then. I'm blanking on his name again. Senior moment, sorry. But he recorded several albums there, and they went on to make millions. And then it turned, I mean, with every turn of genre in LA, when it turned to punk, they painted all the studios' walls black and welcomed them all in. And a whole bunch of those people came in and worked on it. And then, I don't know, it's not, I think it's still open, but I don't know what the level of recording is anymore. But it might have gone out of business after Dave Grohl bought that. That was a huge mixer.
Yeah.
Made by Neve Council in England.
Okay.
Just an amazing board.
Yeah.
Lots of stories about that too.
Oh, I bet.
Recording in those days, you know, I mean, when you finally achieve the thing that you've set out to do, and you're going to record an album. And so we block booked time at Sound City. The first album was in the back room, Studio B, which had a smaller console. And then we would look in Studio A, and at that time, that console looked amazingly big. Then we were hanging out at the studio when the owner bought this new board from Neve. And Rupert Neve came over with the board, the designer, to install it for him. It was just amazing stuff that would happen back in those days.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so we got to see that installed. Then they took the board that was in Studio A, put that back in B. So now we had two Neve consoles in Sound City, and it got busy real quick. Fleetwood Mac recorded their stuff there, and until they started traveling a lot. And that's another fun part of it is, hey, let's record on the road. And we were in Atlanta at the time, and we thought, wouldn't it be cool to record in Atlanta?
Yeah.
So we called Shelter and said, we want to record here. They got a sound pit here. They said, okay. They sent him a PO, and we stayed an extra day and recorded. It was just, you know, being able to leave your equipment in the studio for like weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And just, you know, this is our job now. We got to show up at 9 a.m. and we record. Except our schedule is like 6 p.m. until 4 a.m.
Yeah.
We usually record because that's usually when everyone is most awake.
Going back to that board, did you ever watch that documentary?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. I haven't seen it, but I remember watching the trailer. I forgot about that. Yeah.
God, it's fascinating. And the fact that I got to hang out
there.
there.
You're a piece of history.
Yeah,
you know?
I was there. I mean, Jesus Christ, it just blows my mind sometimes. There was one point when Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were going through a little confusion, for lack of a better word. And Benmont Tench, the keyboard player, was considering leaving the band. And we were playing at Doug Weston's Troubadour in downtown L.A. It was a world famous place. Everyone has played at Doug Weston's Troubadour. Anyway, so we're playing there, and Benmont came down to see us. And on a break, he pulled me aside and he said, "You guys interested in a keyboard player?" I was like, "Well, yeah. Why?" He said, "Well, there's some tension going on, and I don't know what I want to do." And I went, "Well, do you want to come and play with us? Let's jam." You know, and he said, "Sure." All right. So we had one rehearsal with him. We got together, and we were already working on music for our next album. So we played him a few of those and asked him to just be creative. What would you play to this, you know? And, you know, he's a phenomenal keyboard player. He would have fit in just fine. So the next time I saw him, he said, "Well, Tom and I have worked out our problems, and
yeah.
I'm convinced that we're going to be one of the best rock and roll bands the world has ever seen." And I'm thinking, well, that's rather arrogant, you motherfucker.
A little bit.
But yeah, okay, you go ahead, Ben. You know, and lo and behold, he was right.
Yeah.
Jeez, watching those guys rise to stardom was just an amazing thing for me. You know, and because we would always go back to there was one time we were at a Christmas party and a fight broke out. And I'm sure it was over a chick or something, or somebody said something derogatory. But these two musicians on stage just started duking it up. It was a big jam session. I actually got to jam with Mike Campbell. He was on stage playing guitar, and I ran and jumped over on the piano, and I didn't know what I was doing, but we just started jamming. And it's great fun. We all have humble beginnings. And it's very important to remember all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Remember the nights that you had to sleep in the car on the road because there wasn't enough money for a hotel room. And I'm reading a lot of the rock stars' biographies now, autobiographies.
Oh, yeah.
And I like to listen to the audiobooks. And Springsteen recited. He read his whole book.
Nice.
So it was like sitting in a room with him and he's telling you all these stories. It was just amazing.
Right. Probably brings up like venues and stuff, and you're like, oh, I've been there. I know that. I know that person you're talking about.
Exactly, right. And especially, and there was a couple of incidences where he was talking about his former drummer, and this just happened to be total freak circumstance. But when I left my recording career and moved up to Ojai, California, which is about 120 miles north, close to Santa Barbara and Ventura area, and I built a home studio, and I'm doing my best to keep active and inviting other people to come and record. And this guy called me up and he said, I used to play drums with Tom Petty. And I went, sure, come on over. And lo and behold, he did. And he talks about him. I can't remember his name right now either. I probably could have prepared for this a little bit more.
It's fine.
But anyway, so I'm listening to the audio book, and the Tom wasn't reading his audio. The author was reading it. And he mentions this guy's name, and I went, oh my God, I recorded his demo.
That's
little
funny.
things like that just like really touch my heart, that I was there. I got to open for Aerosmith in Washington, D.C., man. That was a real trip.
Yeah, that's God. I saw the list of bands you have performed with, and it's unimaginable. I mean, the list went on and on.
It doesn't happen like that anymore, and I don't think it ever will in the Earth's future again happen like it did then, because it's just the way everything progressed to. Now you're out of the bar scene and you're an opening act. Well, you don't even hear opening acts anymore. It's rare, but I hear Larkin Poe has chosen one act to be their opening act for their whole tour. So I'm glad to hear that somebody is still old school a little bit, so that you can form a relationship and teach this young act something about what it's like to be a fucking rock star,
Yeah.
Instead of just chopping them off, which is what Aerosmith did.
Oh, yeah?
We were playing, we were in this huge Institution Hall, I think it was called. Massive place. Well, Aerosmith, and they were popular at the time. They had already hits. They had just come out with Dream On.
Okay.
Because I remember the place just fell apart.
What is this, like late 70s?
Yeah. And it was on the 4th of July. So these people in the audience are throwing up firecrackers while we're playing. It was just out of hand a little bit.
Yeah.
But my band was on fire that day. I don't know what happened, but we really clicked.
Yeah.
And so we got an encore. Opening acts never get encores. Pretty much the audience knows, don't give them an encore. We want to see the headliner. Mm-hmm. But they were really enjoying what we did. And we just killed the last song. So they gave us an encore. And we killed the next one, and they gave us another encore. And so we started a song.
Nice.
And I'm looking over at the stage, and here's my road manager, and there's a guy standing with him. And my road manager is going, no more,
cut it
off. And he said that his manager came over and he said, if they start another song, we're going to pull the plug. They have to get off stage after this song. And so we did. But it was, and I recently, this is so amazing, I recently got an email from a guy who was at that concert.
Really?
Yeah. And he said, I found a ticket of a concert that I went to, and it doesn't have the gear date on it. And I'm starting this collage with these tickets, and I want information. And Richard Torrance and Eureka is written on this ticket, and I wrote it Eureka in my own handwriting, which means that I really liked your band.
Oh, that's so cool.
And he said, probably more than Aerosmith. And I went, well, I don't know about that. And he said, no, you guys were really hot that night. I remember. But he said, the reason I'm getting a hold of you, I can't remember the year it was. And I can remember that we were promoting our second album on Shelter. So I said, well, that would have been probably 77, maybe 76. 76. And goes, yeah, that's probably it. Because he put it together with a couple chronological things in his mind. He goes, yeah, I bet that was it, But just, out of the blue, I'm getting a call about, man, you guys really nailed it back in the 70s.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Felt pretty good.
Yeah, that is awesome. You have any green room stories or fights with another band? I wanted to hear maybe you punched Steven Tyler right in the face or something.
No, nothing that dramatic, but something did happen with Steven Tyler that was just an unusual situation. It was at that gig. We only did the one gig with them, right?
Okay.
And so they had built this massive stage, and then behind it, there was room on the ground. You had to walk downstairs to get down in the ground. And you'd walk behind the seating area, and then they had all of these dressing rooms back there. But you had to walk down this long hall to get to where the dressings were. And so we finished our set, and I think the band just immediately went for wherever there was alcohol. And I was still talking to my road manager and getting things together. I handed him my guitar, and I was going to walk back to the dressing room and get out of the sweaty clothes I was in. And so as I'm walking, here comes this guy. And we're just, it seemed like it was a football field long, because we're just walking, just pacing. It was fucking Steven Tyler. And I got up to him, and there was no one else there. It was one of those things where you just approach a person and you look at them and you keep walking. I didn't say a thing except I went, that's Steven Tyler. Hi. I didn't even say hi. I just looked at him and walked by because I figured that he had probably gotten the word that, the opening act.
You're outshining him, yeah.
And then at the very end, I just real quick kind of looked over my shoulder, and he didn't look back. He didn't.
He did look
He was
back,
on his
though.
way to his gig. We played at a place in Long Island, New York, called My Father's Place. Unusual name for a venue, but it was a bar, but it had a really nice stage area. And Average White Band was booked. Have you ever heard of the Average White Band?
I don't know if I have.
So they were just huge, just for a specific amount of time. And there is a reason why they were so huge. They were an Irish band or Scottish band that played R&B, but they wrote it, and they wrote all of these songs that were, it sounded like Wilson Pickett. It sounded like Marvin Gaye. It sounded like all of these great R&B acts, but it was them. And they really know how to put that sound together. So they were just instantly hits. But it was their very first time in America, and it was one of their first gigs in America. They were still the opening act. So we headlined over this group, the Average White Band, and they just smoked us when they came on because, we were still getting our sound together a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
And they were so polished and so good. And the songs, I was just like, who wrote this? And the sound guy's going, they wrote all this stuff. And then when we were downstairs, before we came on to do our set, they came to us and peeked in the door and said, mind if we come in? Scottish. I can't do a Scottish accent, but no, come on in. And they were just the nicest, most humble guys. And they said, we're just happy to be here, man. We have no idea what's going to go on with this tour, but, thanks a lot for letting us open for you. And
that's cool.
Unbelievable. And then they went on to just catapulted. The reason that they were unfortunately became so famous is because they were playing at one of the real popular venues. I think it was Doug Weston's Troubadour or something like that. And they went to a party afterwards, and Cher was there, and a lot of the big time people were there. And their drummer overdosed on heroin because he thought it was coke, and he snorted it. And nobody said that it was heroin. And for 2 days he struggled with it, and his heart just gave out.
Oh, wow.
So he died, and he he was he was an icon among drummers because he was so smooth and effortless. He could just play this stuff so effortless. And so the band really stumbled because and then they replaced the drummer, and it never really materialized. So the bass player of that band went on to play bass with Paul McCartney.
Oh, okay.
That's the level of ability those guys had.
Yeah. Nice.
That's my story about the Average White Band.
All right, so you brought up Rio de Janeiro. What's that song about?
It's about Rio de Janeiro Blue.
Have
It's about Rio de Janeiro.
Have you been there?
No. Okay, so when I was recording the album Bareback, I had a song called Rio de Janeiro Blue, except it was the working title of it was The Clouds Come A-Creepin', because I didn't have all of the lyrics written. And so we're in the studio, and I've got Harvey Mason on drums with Wilton Felder on bass, and they were just so smooth. But my version of it was more of a swing thing. So it's kind of like started out like Moondance, having a feel like Moondance a little bit. So you got that almost a 3/4 time thing going on, and the bass player said, "Why don't you turn this around to like?" And he started playing this doom 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 doom, just a typical Latin jazz type of feel. And Billy Payne, who was my pre-production guy, goes, "Yep, that's where we want to go. That's where we want to go." And so I just stopped playing guitar, and you guys start playing, and I started singing it in the control room with them in the studio, not recording it yet. And Billy is just, "Oh yeah, man, this is it." And we're looking in at John, the producer, and he's going, "Go for it, go for it." So I immediately jump into the sound booth, and I put on an electric guitar and started playing with it, but they just said, "That gets in the way of the groove, don't you think?" And I'm like, "If you say so." Yeah, and it did. It actually did. So I actually do not play an instrument on my version
Okay.
of Rio de Janeiro Blue, because the solo section was covered then by flute.
Oh, yeah.
And Ernie Watts was the flute player who played with the Tonight Show band. And as I was finishing my album, he came back into the studio long after he had played his parts and he was done doing whatever, but he came back in to say hi, and he got, "I'm so excited." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "The Stones just asked me to go out on the road with them." He went out with the Rolling Stones.
Playing the flute?
No, sax.
Oh.
Yeah, most sax players can play flute, and
Yeah,
he
I
also
suppose,
played
right?
a sax solo on one of my songs. He's an incredible sax player. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was there.
Yeah.
So you're going on the road with the Rolling Stones. Have fun. Do they need a guitar player? Let me know if they need somebody. I'll shine your shoes. I don't care. Yeah, it's great.
So of all those covers, like 30 plus people have covered this song. Do you have a favorite? And do you have a least favorite? One that just sucks. You heard and you're like, "That's dog shit."
No, there actually isn't. There isn't one that sucked, because I guess I'm very fortunate that all of the people that approached my song or were interested in recording it and then publishing it somewhere, like on YouTube or something like that, were just really incredible players. It's been recorded by Nat King Cole's brother, Freddie Cole. And what he did with it, because he's got this low baritone voice, so he turned it into a samba, which is dun 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 dun, really fast, that kind of a thing. And he goes, "The clouds come a-creepin'." He sings it in halftime.
Wow.
So he pulled the melody back and just totally rewrote it.
Yeah.
But it works, and it's so cool. And then there's another guy that's actually based out of Rio de Janeiro that I've got on my phone. I'll play it for you after we're done. And he is amazing. And he's pretty big, apparently, in Rio, and he recorded it too. But Randy Crawford is the one that did the best for me, because she recorded it a year after Nicolette Larson recorded it, and Nicolette's arrangement also went pretty well. But Randy, she was in the jazz realm, and boy, she's got a beautiful voice, and her arrangement
I've
of
heard
that
this
song is just incredible.
Yeah.
First time I heard it, I didn't even know they had covered it. I read about it in Rolling Stone.
Oh yeah.
And I called Capitol. I called Warner Brothers, and I said, I'm Richard Torrance, the guy that wrote Rio de Janeiro Blue. I would certainly love a copy of that album. And they sent it to me.
Oh, nice.
And this is when I discovered that would have been in 1981. So,
wait, did you feel like a pride or almost a jealousy? Like somebody took your music and...
I understand where you're coming from
Yeah.
there. Yeah, I didn't feel that at all. I hadn't heard it yet because they weren't playing it on the radio, or I wasn't picking it up yet. And because, there still was no online stuff. So, you would have had to hold the phone and have someone play it and hold the phone out there,
Yeah.
And so I just waited until I got the album. And, and here it is, and I look on the back and there's my name, Rio de Janeiro Blue, Richard Torrance. I'm oh God. And I put the album on and it starts this intro. And I'm like, oh my God. And the goosebumps just about jump off of my skin. And by the time they get to then they added a modulation where they change keys right at the end of this beautiful little chord inversion that they do that changes. She goes a half step higher for the last verse. And it just, I started crying. I'm just like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. It really was. It just totally annihilated me. And then all of a sudden I started hearing, oh, wow, Maria Muldaur's got an arrangement of it out, and this arrangement's out, and this arrangement out. And so I started just going on YouTube. And, I just see all these people that had posted them on YouTube. And there's a bunch of them.
Yes.
But there's the ones that I said are 30 releases, they are on record labels.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that because they had to apply for a mechanical.
Right.
And then the money starts rolling in. Man.
Pennies here and pennies
right.
there.
It's exactly right. Yeah. 5 cents? Okay, good. Thanks.
This album cover, Bareback.
Yes.
Who is the hottie?
She's my first wife.
No, the guy.
Oh, put him. I like that.
That's your first wife, huh?
Yeah.
Nice. Are you guys wearing bottoms in this?
Absolutely
nothing.
And
that's what I was imagining.
Okay, so we had a female photographer that we were working with, and she brought a hair designer with her. My hair has never looked like that ever again. That one time, because it's mostly really curly. But anyway, they brushed all the curl out of it, put a fan in front of me so that it's, doing the waving in the wind type thing, keeping my perfect dew. And we started moving around. We were sitting on there's one where we're sitting on a stool, I think. But my wife had on a jean skirt. She didn't have any problem with taking off her top because, we were hippies. Come on. We'd gone to nude beaches and stuff, It's nothing taking off your clothes. So there we are. And she's asking us to start moving a little bit. And then she said, what's happening here is in me taking my pictures, I'm capturing a little bit of that skirt. Robin, you're going to have to lose your skirt. And Richard, you're going to have to take off your cutoffs.
You're like, I'm not wearing anything.
No, I said, are you up for this? My wife, Robin, I asked her, and said, are you up for this? She said, it's your album. I'm here to help. I said, drop your clothes. Let's go. And there was at least a half a dozen people in there.
Really?
From the art department, there was the head of the art department there. My manager walked in just briefly, and the recorder, my producer came in. The attorney came in. The head of A&R from Capitol Records came in. Jeez.
Wait, do they keep going back? They're like, hey, you got to go see what's going on.
You should see his wife. Sign her. No. But yeah, it was a fun session. It really was. So we were naked for probably, better part of a half an hour. We would look at, she would have printouts, real quick printouts, and we would look at it. And that's kind of the right direction. All right, we're going to go more with that. She's, she took like 200 photos we had to go through.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was.
Did you get to keep those?
No,
Oh,
those are all hers because she's a professional. They keep everything.
okay.
You have to buy whatever you need from them.
So all you have is just the cover.
Yeah. Now, if I would have pursued it and said, "Hey, I collect this stuff. I got to have some. I'm the artist." I probably would have been able to nab one, and then it would have got lost in a flood or a fire or
Yeah.
and that's why I didn't really save memorabilia, because I'm transient. I mean, I move a lot. Mm-hmm. Until I got married. Then I started settling down. I was married all through my career.
There was a story, too, about one of your first songs. And in 75, somebody had recorded it off the radio onto a tape, I assume, or something, and never got the name of the song or who wrote it. Decades go by. They put it online. Somebody on a Discord hears it, figures out who it is. It's you. It was a song called
Traveling Minstrel.
Yes. Now, isn't that weird? It comes back to you. Like, we were trying to figure this out for decades. Like, it was some lost song.
Yeah. And I actually, when I got the story, this guy somehow got my phone number and
Oh, yeah?
called me and said, this story goes back to the 70s when you first released it. And I said, how? And he said, well, this, just as you described, a guy was, he prided himself in having his recording equipment ready. So if he heard something that he liked, he'd just hit it real quick and he'd capture it. But he didn't do it through the wires. He did it with a microphone on his shitty little cassette machine.
Yeah.
So that's what he had to work with. And the song Traveling Minstrel, when I wrote it, I knew it wasn't going to be a popular song because it's a folk song, a literal folk song, as if it tells a story about the musician traveling and goes into a town. And I was thinking Old English. So I was thinking of all these little villages. You know, as I came into the village square, I saw a damsel standing there. I can earn my keep for meal and a bath, telling tales of all the villages I've passed, you know, and that's what the story is. And so the story goes on, and the girl brings him some food, and she happens to be in the tavern, and the tavern master lets him play for the night, and then she invites him to come home with them. And isn't that what the musician's life is? Not. But anyway, that's what the song was. And it sounds like a folk song. It's all acoustic guitar, and then it's got a bass drum that sounds like you're marching in it, a big, huge marching bass drum, and a harpsichord, of all things. You know, it's just it was an interesting song. I just recorded it, and I wanted to record it, and I knew if I released it, I'd probably get teased about it, and I was, because it was like, well, that song sure doesn't meet any of the, or match any of the other styles you've got.
Yeah,
what's
right?
going on there? And I said, it's just a song, you know. Bob Dylan writes strange songs too sometimes. You know, it's my right. They're called filler, you know, because you don't have enough songs.
You're right.
It's a good song. You wrote it, so put it on there, and it probably won't do anything. And then it creates this search.
Yeah,
because they didn't know who it was all the way up to, well, then now computers are out and online searching and things like that. And apparently this guy is still alive and goes, let's see if we can find this one all over again. So now there's actually a group of people that do this. And I can't remember what they're called, but they find music that someone gets a hold of them and says, I can't find this. Who is it? You know, and they do that. And they did it. They found me.
Your new group today.
Yes, Jennifer Lynn.
You guys have a music video now. I saw that. After all these years, is that like your first music video you've ever done?
No.
Okay.
But they weren't called music videos back then. They were just called a spot, or I can't even remember. But, I guess I would have to say with going back to the first music video that I made with Jennifer here in town, and we did it alone. We did it without a videographer. She had cameras, and we had the music recorded. So we just went out and tried it, see what would happen. And geez, it turned out really good, way better than I thought it would. And so I thought, geez, you have a knack for this, Jen. And so we did another one, and that turned out pretty good too. And I think those probably were the first music videos where you sit down, you go, all right, we're going to produce a music video. This is what we want it to look like. Here's a couple of locations. Here's what we'll do. It was outlined, and it was handled, even though we really didn't know what we were doing. Mm-hmm. You don't know what you're doing until you get into the editing room and you look at all of this stuff and you start listening to the music and you go, oh, I see a story here, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And so I went out and got myself all kinds of video equipment now, and I'm hooked.
Oh, nice.
But it's
so
going to take me a while.
Videos.
It's going to take me a while to get up to speed where Jen is, because we're already producing new videos to promote our new album that will be released in April.
Nice.
So I'm sure right now she's probably working on one. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it was Gypsy Soul.
Gypsy Soul, yeah.
Video. You guys are basically in your underwear out in
the
outside.
cold. Yeah. Bathing suits.
Bathing suits, sure.
My third wife said, so where'd you guys change into your bathing suits? And I said, there was a bathroom. She went into the bathroom. I know that we went to this guy's house who had the Volkswagen van, because we wanted it inside a Volkswagen van. It was really clever how the videographer was able to make us, because of a green screen, he made us flying.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't have any idea what he was going to do until he sent us the first mock-up,
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is incredible. This is exactly what we want,
Yeah.
A little tongue-in-cheek, a little humor. It's fun. So now we're, the new CD, Jen and I wrote 10 new songs. And all of them are original, and we're real pleased with how they came out. The band came right in and said, yeah, this is how this one's supposed to feel, and we nailed it. So it's going to be called Retrograde.
Cool.
Because we relate back to the 70s so much that it's retro.
Nice.
And it's grade.
Yeah.
Grade A. It's really good.
Where do you guys play?
We have our CD release party coming up on April 24th.
Okay, that'll be for the new one.
And that's going to be at the Bell Mayhew's.
Yeah.
So
right
we have finally, the last gig we did in Bismarck as Jennifer Lynn in the Groove Revival was in the end of the summer, and it was 2/3 full. So we realized that Bismarck really loves us. They support us, and we are so thankful for that. So our goal for this particular CD release party is to sell out the Bell. Mm-hmm. And if we can do that, that would just be excellent.
Nice.
And we got a great sound system. We got lights coming in. It's going to be a good show. And like I said, it's going to be more promoting. We're going to feature more of our own original music this time, whereas when we've played past shows, in order to attract an audience,
bunch of covers,
we've done themed shows. We worked up a whole bunch of the Allman Brothers stuff and did an Allman Brothers show.
That's so much better than just being doing covers and
right.
Yeah.
So people know what they're coming to get, mm-hmm. and then we would, throughout those performances, sprinkle in a few of our originals, and to the point to where people are going, God, your originals are great. They're buying our merchandise, and why don't you play more of your originals? Okay, We're going to do that now.
Yep.
So this is the year that we are switching over to promoting our original music, and we still will do covers, interesting covers, fun covers that we know we love and the audience also loves. So we're looking forward to a good performance this year. So we don't play anywhere in Bismarck but the Bell now. We're not going backwards.
Oh, yeah.
No bars. The only thing that Jen does, and along with Jen, myself, and the drummer, who are also in the Groove Revivals, we three go to the Elks here in Bismarck every Tuesday, and there's a jam session there. And all kinds of people come in. Most of the musicians in Bismarck know about it, and they'll stop in on occasion. Or got a lot of locals that come in from 6 to 9 every Tuesday. We've been doing it for over 4 years now. And it's a real fun way to get your yayas out and play with some other people, listen to music. We've got an ongoing crowd now because the people really enjoy watching what happens. Because sometimes we just fall on our faces. Let's start this song. We start it out and it's, how's this go? And we just bail. Just no, cut. And that one didn't work, folks. We're going to try another one. And it's fun. It really is fun. So that's the only other performing that I am doing right now is just that Tuesday night thing in preparation for the release of, I got to learn these songs. We recorded them. That doesn't mean I can play them from beginning to end. It's a whole different thing, learning to play them live and figuring out if the album arrangement is going to suit live performance or if we have to modify it in one way or another. So that all takes a lot of effort.
Are you playing any of your old stuff?
No.
Okay.
I'm not doing anything from Richard Torrance's career because we're promoting Jennifer Lynn.
And has it ever been talked about of covering yourself in a sense? Like, has she done any of your songs to you?
We were talking about one song that she wanted to do, and she did it live. She liked to sing it, so we did it live a few times, but we never did record it. But just because her and I have really found a niche. We write well together. We collaborate amazingly well together. And, I'll come up with a lick and I'll just say, does this do anything for you? And just start humming. Hey, that sounds kind of good. Wait, let's do that again. And she'll just, make up some words temporarily. And I'll say, okay, so, maybe let's, what would be a different chord to go to after this section? I'll go to a different chord. Yeah. And then I can take the vocal down there. And it's amazing. 15 minutes, we've got an outline for a song. It's just, it works.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully they're good songs,
Right.
You know what the definition of a good song is?
Oh, geez.
When someone else likes it.
Yeah, right. Okay. I don't know if I've had a good song.
Well, that's what I mean. You can sit and play it in your bedroom all day long.
Yeah, I like
someone else goes, wow, that's a good song. Then
Yeah.
Because I think all of my songs are good. I like them because they mean something to me. They represent something, a period in my life or an experience that I went through. A lot of them are about ladies. I like to write songs about ladies that I fall in love with.
Yeah.
Most musicians do.
Any advice for somebody getting a first car?
Oh, man. Go for style. Because it is an ego extension of yourself. And if you're driving around a stupid car, people are going to go, oh, there's that stupid car. Go for style, But, the downside of it is that everything now costs so much, So a person with their first car, it's obviously going to be a used car.
Yeah. Not a caddy.
I had a used... The first car, one of the cars that I bought when I came out to California, and I got that wonderful gig that I was telling you about out on the peripheral of the UCSB, and we were attracting all of these college kids in Santa Barbara. I found a 2000 Mark II Austin Healey. No, Austin Healey.
Yeah.
2000 Mark II convertible. It was the raciest car, 2-seater. Oh, totally unpractical. I was a musician. I haul around equipment. I didn't care. Someone else is going to carry the amp. I got to own this car. And
yeah. What could you fit in there? One guitar?
Yeah, one guitar in the passenger seat. But man, was that car fun to drive. Yeah. Austin Healey, 2000 Mark II. Best sports car I ever had. Get a sports car.
Yeah. And then how about somebody who's starting a band?
Get a sports car. No. Who's starting a band? Oh, boy. Know the Serenity Prayer. And let me give you the Serenity Prayer. And it comes from Alcoholics Anonymous. So that gives you a clue about some of my past, too. The Serenity Prayer goes, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because if you're going to start a band, you're going to be working with all kinds of different personalities. That's the first thing you're going to see. The best keyboard player is going to be wacko. The best drummer is going to be out of his mind. I have worked with so many crazy people. If you're going to be an artist in this world, you just have to be a little crazy. It just is required because you need to take risks. You have to be full of yourself to promote yourself. You can't really say, I'm good, because, oh, what an ego trip. Well, how are you going to tell somebody you're good unless you use those words, right? Let me prove it to you. I'll play for you. Well, then you write music. So that first line of the Serenity Prayer, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Well, that's pretty much everything. Whenever you come up against an obstacle, you have to realize, is this something that I can change? And one will usually find, yes, I can change it, but that means that I have to change. So be willing to be flexible and be forgiving and be accepting and just see what happens. And don't ever quit. I quit a few times, and it's hard coming back. And boy, do you miss it. Once it's in your blood, it's in your blood to stay. I couldn't imagine not playing. And because I am a performer, I can't imagine not performing. And here I am, 74 years of age. I'm on stage with Jennifer Lynn, who is much younger than I am. And I'm keeping up with her to the point to where she's saying, calm down a little bit. I can't keep up with you. She says, I'm the Energizer Bunny running around on stage. I'm very active on stage. So the music moves me, and I let myself move.
Nice.
So I love music.
Thank you for coming on.
It's my pleasure.
And then I don't even know where I was going with that, I guess. But I had a point. I just lost it. I'm sorry.
So this happens in your 20s too.
Yeah.
I thought it was because I was getting old.
I was gonna say too, like I'm really impressed with how you remember everyone's names too back there.
Well, for some reason when I start talking about it, they come back.
It comes back.
It really does. Like, if you would catch me at a gig somewhere and go, "What was the name of your guy there?" Fuck, I can't remember.
Yeah.